We constantly get asked why the SV650 and what's the benefits, what are the why do we ride SVs when other bikes exist? And to me, I like to think of the SV as the Miata of motorcycles. And if you're familiar with Miatas, there's a acronym for what Miata stands for, and Miata is always the answer. Well, if we think of SVs as Miatas of motorcycles, the SV is always the answer. Sviata, maybe? All right, so couple of things that make the SV pretty awesome as far as motorcycles you might want to own. So if you look at Facebook Marketplace and look for an SV650, you'll find an absolute ton of them for sale for all sorts of price ranges, anything from dirt cheap and needing some work uh, to quite nice and expensive or new. So they're fairly cheap, and they're also a pretty good choice for a starter bike because when you when you combine the fact that it's not intimidating, or not as intimidating as an inline four, or not as intimidating as any of the higher horsepower bikes. They're not crazy heavy. They're not that tall. So they do make for decent starter bikes if you're, capable of handling them. There's probably, if you're smaller or if you're less athletic or something like that, they might not be the greatest, but they do make for decent starter bikes. So the other thing it does is as a starter bike, is it teaches you good habits for cornering because you can't fix it with power. You can't roll on the throttle after you went through the corner very slowly, and you can't make up that time by just gassing it because they're lower on the power. If you didn't do the corner well at speed, if you didn't bring a bunch of roll speed with you, you're going to be catching up for the next three turns. So that's a good thing as far as being a good starter track bike as well. I mean, obviously, 250s, 400s, all those guys are also excellent starter bikes. Now, another thing with SVs that I find absolutely awesome is the community, because between svrider.com, between Reddit's RSV riders, between all the Facebook groups, there are plenty, and SV portal, and basically you pick a media. There's a SV Discord. There's probably, like, if you want to talk about SVs on some platform, there's a community for it. But the cool thing about the community is um, kind of come from all walks of life. Um, it's not really a group that's homogenous, and it's not really a group that's a certain kind of person. So, like, I've met millionaires with SVs. Yes, there are actually a few, but I'm not gonna out people. To Let's just call them dozenaires. Any kind of socioeconomic, you know, race, color, income, identity, whatever. Like, you get to meet people from all sorts of lives, which is super cool to me. So the other thing that's really awesome with SVs and the communities, we have 20 years plus of knowledge about these bikes, at least on SV Rider and everywhere else. They haven't changed that much in the last 20 years. So that means if there's a question, somebody has dealt with it, somebody has fixed it, somebody is around to help out, somebody who knows something about your problem or a similar one, or can walk you through troubleshooting, and they're super helpful. Another thing about the community, because these bikes are not um, they're not fast. There's no flex behind them. There's no clout behind them. There's no dick measuring to be had because, hey guys, look at my awesome SV. You're not going to impress anybody. And people come into the community knowing that. So since they come into the community knowing that, they don't really Um, it's not really a competitive environment except on the race circuits. And the community doesn't really appreciate the whole flexing on each other or flames or whatever. So it is actually a very friendly place. Um, a very friendly place to be if you want to talk about bikes and not get too much flames. Yeah, of course, somebody's gonna ask, "What oil do I use?" or "What tires do I run?" And that will turn into a shit show. But that's every community ever. At least you don't have guys, you know, trying to flex by putting up races against each other or whatever. So another thing that's really awesome about SVs, pretty much at any track day or at any CCS, we're a CMRA, pick a race org. There's going to be a huge number of track bikes in the paddock, and I just pulled up a Google search, so you'll see anything from Sam's lightweight twins bikes to guys that are tracking for the first time on their street bike. They're everywhere, and that's a pretty cool thing because when we have racing, and it's the same is true as with Miata. We have a lot of upgrade parts available because the more people race, the more manufacturers want to actually design stuff for these bikes. So anything from suspension, aero, motor parts, lightweight parts, exhausts, whatever. There's a huge availability of stuff because a lot of people are racing. And then, lastly, what's really cool about the SV is there's a whole class that's in Moto America that's basically dominated by them. So I just pulled up last year's results for the Laguna Seca round of the Twins Cup. Suzuki, one lone Cowie, and a couple of Yamahas here and there. But um, that basically means that there's a lot of people who know how to build these bikes and make them fast. Robin Engineering, for example, lightweight twins. Uh, TWF Zorin is an absolute legend in Suzuki world, but there's also lots of other shops. Triple Strong Racing can build an excellent SV. Speedworks makes an excellent SV. Pretty much we know the formula, not me personally, but we as the community know the formula for what it takes to make an SV a good bike. And it really shows in the race results. With Aprilia coming out with the 660, we'll see what this year brings. But anyway, so um, I'm sure there'll still be plenty of SVs out on the grids. Now, couple of other things that are awesome. There, like I mentioned, because of racing, there's a huge amount of SV650 part. I don't know. So just search for random things. There's going to be millions of things that you can get for this bike to upgrade it. There's also going to be a ton of used parts. Shameless plug. I have a ton of used parts for these bikes. You should probably check out the site if you haven't before. Uh, so ton of used parts, ton of new dealer support. There's still pretty much anything on the bike you can pretty much get new from the dealer. Some parts are getting kind of rare, or some parts may be expensive, but generally, new used parts, aftermarket parts, new parts, everything's available. And they're pretty easy to work on because you can get parts everywhere. The cost of failure isn't particularly high. Like I broke that thing. Okay, well, let me just get another one. And they're just not complicated bikes. You don't need a ton of tools. You don't need a ton of electronics. You don't need a ton of anything um, to work on them. They're also pretty easy on tires. They're pretty easy to pretty easy on brakes, pretty easy on every consumable you can think of. That makes them cheap to run, and cheap to run is also always good. And then Honestly, lastly, they're a blast to ride. They're pretty light. They're not intimidating. You can wring their neck if you want to, and you can squeeze out quite a bit of the bike at almost any skill level. Um, they're like I said, they're the Miata of bikes. You can build them for the track. You can build them for the street. You can build them to tour on. You can build them to just mess around on. You can do pretty much anything short of stunting because wheelies kill SVs. This is well known in the community as well. But yeah, if you have additional ideas, let me know why you like SVs. Let's get a good comment section going.